Hey everybody, welcome back to our channel. We have another good video, I hope, for today. We have Roger here also, says hey as usual, and we have Miss Scarlet looking out the window as usual as well. So this video today is actually another Patreon request. This is from Scott. And so this one is going to be on the hunt for the Arctic Ghost ship. Now, I don't really know anything about this story. I've never heard of it before, so this should be eye-opening, I hope. What I do know about it from the description of the video, it says that this is going to be about the HMS Erebus that apparently went missing in like 1845. And I learned recently that HMS means Her Majesty's Ship. So you guys let me know what all of these little acronyms, whatever they're called, designations, ship designations mean in one of my previous videos not too long ago. So I appreciate that. But apparently it went missing somewhere around the Northwest Passage, which I don't really know where that is exactly, other than I think it's in the Alaska region, but I just wanted to look very quickly so I have some bearing here. Now, it might show this during the video, but let's see. Okay. Oh, okay. So it goes all the way through Canada in these little, looks like, see if you can zoom in here. So it looks like it goes through all of these like crazy islands in Canada, which is a little dicey, I would think. Goes, okay. It goes way up there. For some reason, I didn't think it was that far up, but it's up there close to the North Pole. Well, I guess somewhat close to the North Pole. And goes around the top of Alaska through, so it goes through the Bering Strait up here. Okay. So I wonder where in here, though, this ship got lost. I would think it would be like right in where Victoria Island is, right in the middle where all of these islands are. That looks really, really dangerous to try and sail through, so I'm not sure about that, but okay. Well, there we have it. Yeah, and let's see. I kind of like took a few notes here just to mention so I didn't get lost, but okay. And of course this ship is going to be from the Royal Navy too. They were searching for the Northwest Passage when they went missing, I guess. But why they were searching for the Northwest Passage all the way over here, I don't know in this part of the world. So this is going to be a history story that I've never heard of before. And I'm also really excited to kind of get back to some Navy stuff because I've done a lot of military stuff on, land battles and everything, and I enjoy that, but I also enjoy learning about some of the other branches of the military as well. So I guess without further ado, we'll just go ahead and get into the video because I don't really have that much else to say about it.
In 1845, an ambitious British expedition set out to find one of the greatest prizes in all exploration, the elusive Northwest Passage. Armed with the latest equipment, Sir John Franklin led 2 ships into uncharted Arctic waters. But they vanished, never to return.
Oh, there's 2 ships that
There is no
disappeared.
story in the history of British exploration that ends as tragically as this. 129 men disappear off the face of the earth.
Clues have been found. Bodies in the ice. Unexplained sightings of a mysterious ghost ship. Even signs of cannibalism. But without the ships themselves, this remains one of the world's most enduring maritime mysteries.
Ships don't just disappear. And if there is a Franklin expedition ship, we will find that ship.
I feel like a lot of ships just
In
disappear.
2014, archaeologists mounted the biggest modern search for the wrecks. Combining 21st century technology and previously dismissed eyewitness accounts, they made an astonishing discovery.
We're both looking at the sonar monitor, jabbed my finger at the screen and kind of lunged forward and said, "That's it, that's it."
The search teams have finally hit the jackpot.
After more than a century of searching, one of Franklin's lost ships is coming back from the dead.
What is that a gun?
Oh my God, we are going to open up a window directly into history.
This
What
is the
what the
exclusive
story
inside
is.
story of a discovery that's set to rewrite the history of exploration and could finally solve the mystery of John Franklin's doomed expedition. In the summer of 1845, Sir John Franklin led an expedition to conquer the Northwest Passage, the fabled route linking Europe with Asia. The approaches to the passage were already mapped, but in between, a treacherous, uncharted maze of islands and ice that defied explorers for centuries.
So they're just trying to find a route from Europe to Asia, is that all this is? You'd think there would be, I don't know, maybe it would be a shorter route than them having to go through, I guess they would have to go around South America, I guess, to get there otherwise, right? Because the Panama Canal did not exist at this point. So this would be a much shorter route, I suppose. Seems to be a bit more dangerous, maybe, too. I don't know. I don't really know what the shipping routes were back then.
Of islands and ice that defied explorers for centuries. Franklin's mission was to navigate that final link and claim the passage for the British Empire.
The fact that there's an empty space on the chart, a terra incognita, that's both appealing but also an insult to the British Navy. They need to fill in the lines on the map. There's power in the ink lines that are drawn on chart. It's ownership, it's sovereignty, it's politics.
Franklin's
interesting
expedition
mindset.
set off in a blaze of publicity, surrounded by a great deal of enthusiasm. Franklin, the distinguished veteran of the Arctic, would lead this two-ship expedition to success.
To force the passage, Franklin assembled the best equipped Arctic expedition there'd ever been. HMS Erebus and HMS Terror were ex-gunships, now fitted with the latest innovations such as central heating and steam propulsion.
Oh.
Plans held at the National Maritime Museum show their hulls strengthened against the ice, with extra layers of oak and iron plating. Protection against the desolate and hostile wilderness they were about to enter.
It was somewhere that had fascinated men for hundreds of years, but they'd never mastered the environment. It was very much the dark side of the moon as far as the Victorians were concerned.
In July 1845, Erebus and Terror were last seen by whaling ships at the gateway to the Northwest Passage. From there, they sailed off the edge of the known world. They never came back. In 2014, the biggest modern hunt for Franklin ships is getting underway. Led by the Canadian government, this multi-agency task force is the culmination of 6 years' effort.
You know, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what modern ships can do versus what they went through, because obviously they're going to be going through a lot of the same routes, probably, as those ships did, and they're going to have to be navigating these same waters. Now, obviously, they're closer to home, so they can go back, like they're just going out temporarily and coming back. So there's that difference, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see like what a difference modern technology makes with this.
With icebreakers, helicopters, and state-of-the-art sonar equipment, all carefully maneuvered into position. One of the driving forces behind this year's search effort is John Geiger.
It's the greatest mystery in exploration history. There's nothing that compares with it. It's really important from a historical standpoint to understand what happened to them.
Parks Canada's lead diver Ryan Harris has been searching for the wrecks for much of his career.
This is actually our 6th field season searching for Franklin's lost ships. We're hoping that there's going to be a payday down the road here.
So they get paid if they find them?
These hostile seas are frozen solid for 10 months a year, leaving only a brief summer search window. With huge expanses of ocean floor to survey, underwater archaeologist Marc-Andre Bernier knows they'll have to work fast. So this year, they brought a secret weapon.
The submarine
Well, what
drone?
we have here is a autonomous underwater vehicle. It's basically an unmanned piece of torpedo that we can deploy, and it will follow the route that we've asked it to follow, gather data, and come back with that data. This piece of equipment is quite spectacular.
It's a drone.
Better known as the AUV, it uses sonar technology to obtain a detailed image of the sea floor.
Continuance to Zodiac, just confirm the vehicle has dove.
Originally designed to detect naval mines, it will now be used to search for the 2 missing wrecks.
This is Zodiac, we will hang by in location for a little while.
Franklin's expedition.
He may be about to say this. I'm assuming that they have like the logs, like maybe they filed a course chart with the I don't know, the Royal Navy or whoever they file it with over in Britain before they left, so that they know the route that they were supposed to take. So I'm assuming that that's what they're working off of here. I mean, otherwise, where would you start, you know? So, or there might be just a well-known route that all ships would have taken, and maybe that's it too. But it sounds like he might be about to say something about this.
Franklin's expedition entered the Arctic in 1845 with supplies for 3 years.
3 years?
But 3 years later, there was no news. And with every passing month, fears were growing that something had gone wrong. In 1850, search parties were sent to the Arctic. And on Beechey Island, at the entrance to the Northwest Passage, the first clue was found.
Gravestone.
Graves. 3 sailors who had died during Franklin's very first winter in the Arctic.
This shouldn't happen. 3 men should not die in the first winter of an Arctic expedition. They've only been out of Britain 6 months. What's killing them?
With Erebus and Terror stuck in the ice, Franklin's expedition spent their first winter here, at Beechey Island. Overwintering was something they'd anticipated. Burying 3 of their crew was not.
I mean, they're in really harsh conditions, so I mean, I'm not that surprised that people died, you know, because I mean, I feel like the conditions are right for something bad happening, you know? So I don't understand this, they shouldn't have died or whatever. I feel like whenever you're in these situations, somebody always dies. Especially back then. Like, maybe in modern times it would be not as acceptable, you know? But I don't know. Like, I feel like back then, before they had the sort of like technology and the equipment that we have today, it would have been a little bit harder to survive in these conditions. So this should be interesting what they say here.
Burying 3 of their crew was not. Strangely, they marked one grave with an unsettling quote from the Bible.
Thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways.
Puzzling, it's ominous.
They kill
Has
them?
something gone wrong? Do they sense that something is going to go wrong for the rest of the expedition?
Did they do something to the rest of the crew and the rest of the crew killed them? This is what that quote sounds like to me.
It's tragic, but it's also the first proof that this is where Franklin and his men have been.
Over a century later, in 1984,
What an 80s
archaeologists
here.
exhumed the bodies to try to find out why they died.
Oh, jeez.
The corpses of Franklin's men were shockingly well preserved in the frozen ground. Tests revealed high levels of lead, giving rise to the theory that toxic tinned food had poisoned them. But what actually killed the men remained a mystery. And frustratingly, nothing at the gravesite indicated where the expedition had gone next. All we know is that by springtime, the ice had broken up, and Franklin pushed on, deeper into the maze.
I feel like they killed those guys. Consider that was something of your ways. It's not like they did something wrong or something. Maybe they poisoned them on purpose.
In the waters of the Northwest Passage, the search for Franklin's lost ships continues. The AUV has brought back detailed images of the sea floor. Anything man-made would show up immediately. But so far, they've drawn a blank. And there's worse to come. When this part of the search team runs into heavy sea ice, it's a worrying development.
As hard as it may be to believe, this is somewhere in the Arctic. This is parts of the Arctic. This is as good as it's going to get this year.
There's more ice here this summer than there's been for several years. It's thought that Franklin faced exactly the same conditions 170 years ago.
In some odd way, this is as it should be. This is a lot closer to what Franklin was dealing with.
I mean, how do they know? Do they?
You get here and you realize that this is why Erebus and Terror have not been found. It's a very difficult part of the world to operate in. If it were easy, it would have been done many, many years ago. Maybe we'll get lucky.
Maybe they kept records of how much ice there was, you know, throughout the years or something.
In the same waters in 1846, luck was not on the side of Franklin and his crew. More than a decade after the expedition disappeared, a second vital clue was found, left by Franklin's men in an icy cairn.
The note, an incredible document, the only written record of the fate of the Franklin cruise. How can a piece of paper hold fortune in its hands? This is the most important object that has been recovered.
This precious piece of the Franklin puzzle is now held at the National Maritime Museum in London.
It was standard naval practice to issue these kind of notes with a standard blank form that would be filled in when necessary. The notes were then placed in tubes like these. They could be just left for people to find information about the expedition.
The note reveals that after their first winter in the Arctic, the expedition sailed some 300 miles south before the sea froze around them again.
So
And they
got
spent
stuck.
a second winter locked in the ice.
How long?
But
How long would it take to actually sail through that whole part of the Northwest Passage where all of those icebergs are and stuff? Because it sounds like it's taking them months to do it, which I'm assuming, you know, they would probably have to go fairly slowly to navigate around some of this stuff, so maybe they would have to slow way down and it would just take them longer to get through it. I'm surprised, though, it was taking them years to get through it. Like, I wouldn't have expected it to be that long.
But crammed in around the margins of the same note is a disturbing update. Added a year later, it contains only bad news.
Franklin died, it looked like.
Doctor? Yes?
Sir John Franklin was dead. 9 other officers and 15 men had also passed away. Something was going seriously wrong.
The loss of any leader in the middle of an expedition isn't good news. Particularly so when you're stranded in the middle of nowhere in a hostile environment.
This guy right here looks like he has a very, like, Tudor mustache, and I'm assuming it's a Tudor because on Horrible Histories, the guy that represents the Tudors looks like this. So he looks like he has a Tudor mustache and beard.
When you're stranded in the middle of nowhere in a hostile environment. A devastating morale blow.
To make matters worse, that summer, the sea refused to thaw. Trapped in the ice,
Okay.
the crew now faced a third grueling winter in the Arctic. In the perpetual gloom, the ship's bells were rung every half an hour to mark the passing of time. The note says the captain of HMS Terror, Francis Crozier, was now in command. With Franklin dead and supplies running low, he ordered the men to abandon the ships. They would attempt to march hundreds of miles south, where a river provided a possible route inland to the nearest trading post.
Doesn't sound like a good idea, but I guess what are you gonna do, right?
It's the most enigmatic of clues. It's just enough to locate them in the landscape. It's just enough to tell you that something terrible has happened. It's just enough to point you in the right direction to follow them. But there's so many things that are not there.
Thanks to Captain Crozier's note, the search team has the coordinates of the last known position of Franklin's ships. There's thick ice here, so with their summer search window closing first, the Coast Guard helicopter goes up to look for open water.
Yeah, stand by for last alarm. And that alarm, you can get to our position right here. You've got at least 8 to 10 miles in open water before the next concentration of ice.
That's good. Actually, that's excellent.
It's been a sort of cat and mouse game. We feel like we have a break, we feel like we have a shot, and then the ice shifts and the door is closed. The good news is that to the north of us, there is a large opening. And this is right where we want to be. It's right in the primary search zone. And so essentially we have a shot here. We have a chance to get the AUV in the water.
We're waiting to launch the first mission of the day. We're going to look at the first block of 4 kilometers long. There we go. Now the waiting starts.
You can see it right out. You have a visual on it now?
Just a couple of hours in, drifting ice is yet again spotted near the AUV. The run is aborted.
In the northern area, it's been the problem. It's changing very rapidly. This morning we had a window, a very large window, so we went out and very rapidly that opening closed on us from all sides, so now we had to abort. But the ice is moving quickly around us, again, capturing us, trapping us.
It's a pretty big
With
ship.
heavy sea ice all around them, the AUV is pulled out of the hunt. It's a frustrating setback, and winter is approaching fast. But all is not lost. The team has also been following a second lead, based on information that was once overlooked. In the oral history of local Inuit populations, there are intriguing stories of a lone vessel seen drifting 100 miles from where the ships were supposedly abandoned. At the last recorded position of Franklin's ships, thick sea ice is blocking the search. But further south, there's a second search zone, based on some intriguing clues. Nomadic Inuit have lived in this part of the Arctic for nearly 1,000 years. There's no written history here, but information is handed down in other ways.
Oral history is our science. It's the science of Inuit. That's how we learn about where to go and get the food. Or you may know about these ice conditions in the springtime. Oral history had to be very, very accurate, because if it was not, it could mean death.
Could these oral traditions provide an important clue to the fate of the Franklin expedition? In 1848, after 3 winters stuck in the ice, the surviving crew members abandoned the ships. Stories passed down by Inuit hunters record sightings of the men as they marched south. Behind them, they dragged boats laden with supplies.
They were walking in soft snow and then into cracks in the ice where your foot would plunge through. It was an extremely hard physical and therefore mental experience.
I wonder if these explorers knew that the Inuits were there, and if so, I wonder if they ever thought about trying to approach them for help, you know, as far as like getting shelter or food, you know, those sorts of things, just to kind of help keep them going or whatever. So I don't know, it's almost like they didn't know that they were there, but they were close enough to where the Inuits saw them. So I mean, they were right there. So they must have just not known about them, or it would have been too dangerous to approach. Like, they didn't want to risk, you know, approaching them without knowing how they would be received, those sorts of things. So,
If they stop, they die. But there's no solution. So they walk. and they pick themselves up and they try and head south, pulling the ship's boats behind them.
One remarkable face-to-face encounter with the starving crew was described by Inuit hunters.
Oh, well, here we go.
An English officer came forward, shouting the Inuit word for friend. Some believe this was Captain Crozier, who had learned some words on a previous expedition. He was given seal meat for his hungry crew.
Don't eat it raw. Please don't eat it raw.
But there was no way the Inuit could support so many men. So they left, knowing it would have been suicide to stay. Franklin's doomed crew continued to march south through the frozen wilderness.
The Inuits live in that region, so I would have asked to maybe it would have not been good to invite yourself to their village or wherever their home is, just to like give yourself and your men a break, you know, warm up, get some food, get some resupply, and then continue. But apparently, for whatever reason, they didn't do that or didn't feel that they could do that, so.
The word cold, as we know it, takes on a different meaning. You feel like you want to roll up in a fetal ball all the time. You become inactive, weak-willed. You don't want to do anything other than sort of creep into some place where there's no wind and no cold.
But as you get farther from the ships, bodies are found lying on the beach, lying on gravel ridges, lying in small camps, bodies everywhere.
Sometime later, Inuit hunters came across one of these camps, with no sign of survivors. They made a grisly discovery.
That's where the cannibalism comes in,
when
right?
When news of it reached England, it sparked outrage.
So this is 1854. This is the Times, October the 23rd. The bodies of some 30 persons were discovered. Some were in a tent, others under the boat, which had been turned to form a shelter. From the mutilated state of many of the corpses, and from the contents of the kettles, it is evident that our wretched countrymen had been driven to the last resource. Cannibalism as a means of prolonging existence. It's a horrendous, horrific truth for a Victorian public to hear.
You know, here's the thing. Here's the thing about that is I've heard people like say, well, if I was in that situation, then obviously there's no way we're getting out of this. So what's the point is there to, you know, resort to something like cannibalism? Because all you're doing is extending your misery, you know? So I don't know. Maybe they just didn't like each other enough to, you know, kind of like make a pact that, you know, we're not going to do that to each other, or I don't know. Maybe they were so desperate they didn't care. It's just interesting.
And eat each other, least of all naval heroes.
To many in Britain, the stories of cannibalism were an insult, and none other than Charles Dickens leapt to the men's defense. He dismissed the Inuit accounts as the uncivilized chatter of a gross handful of people, with the domesticity of blood and blubber.
Okay.
But in 1992, archaeologists settled the matter once and for all, when they examined another camp in forensic detail.
This site map shows the distribution of the bones that we uncovered at the site. On this end of the site, there is a scattering of bones. They're fairly widely scattered. And then as we move towards this end of the site, you see a dense concentration of bones in this area here. The first bone in which I identified a cut mark was a left pelvic bone. I turned it over, uncovered it, lifted it up from the soil, and found a distinct cut mark, clearly identifiable as a mark that was not made by an animal. These kinds of human-made cut marks tend to have a V-shaped cross-section depending on the shape of the blade.
I can't.
The marks were made by metal blades. Flesh was stripped from these bones by knives forged from British
Stop
steel
showing it.
in a last desperate bid for survival.
Oh my gosh. Why? Why? Stop.
The Inuit reports were vindicated. In its disgust, Victorian Britain had rejected their stories as unreliable folklore.
This is disgusting.
But in dismissing Inuit oral tradition, many later searches also overlooked clues about the fate of Franklin's ships. According to Inuit accounts, one of the abandoned ships was crushed in the ice before sinking off King William Island. But oral history also preserves clues about the fate of the second ship. In recent years, this local knowledge has been gathered together by amateur historian Louis Kamukak.
With the elders involved, we collected all the place names in this region, because place name is one way oral history is passed down. Oral history is passed down by speaking, telling stories, but it's also in the place names.
Those names all point towards the presence of a ship, far to the south.
So there's places like past Simpson Strait, Umertalik, a boat place. That's a story where one of the ships was when it was still afloat. That's why it's called a boat place.
The idea that one of Franklin's ships could have made it this far south, 100 miles from its last recorded position, is intriguing. Other Inuit sightings extend right down towards the mainland. And guided by that information, this has become another focus for recent searches.
Well, I mean, at least the Brits are listening to the Inuits now. Obviously, they weren't so keen on doing that originally, but yeah, that's really interesting that the Inuits are the keys to discovering all of this stuff. It's also fascinating to me that you would have people like that lady and these people that go out and plot these precise locations of where they find the bones and all of that stuff. I mean, like, I know archaeologists and historians do that sort of thing, but it's amazing that we go to that much trouble to document this stuff these days. But I'm glad we do, because that's why we have so much controversy over history, I feel like, in the past, is because we don't have those records. I mean, I just did a video yesterday on the Slavs and the Vikings. A lot of people are saying, well, we don't really have historical records of some of that stuff, and so it's just kind of guesswork to a certain extent. So I guess, people like that lady and the people that, do the sort of work that she does take a lot of the guesswork out of history for us now. So that's good.
So what do we have? Detailed oral history that really helps us define where to start looking. Were it not for information provided by the Inuit, we would have no reason to start looking for Franklin's ships down in Wilmot and Crampton Bay.
These southern waters have remained ice-free all summer, and a boat run by the Arctic Research Foundation has been surveying here with a towed sonar unit.
That's the safety cable for the sonar. We don't want to lose it.
This time the data comes in live, and searchers work in shifts to keep a constant eye on the screens. Another team of archaeologists is looking for evidence of the Franklin expedition on land, led by Professor Doug Stenton. When they return from a routine survey, it's helicopter pilot Andrew Sterling who brings news of an exciting breakthrough.
Just walking on the beach, something caught my eye out at the side, and it just looked out of place, the color in behind a rock. So I just went over to investigate it. Wasn't sure at that time what it was. It was a large piece, it was unusual. It wasn't sort of just your usual thing, artifact on the ground. So I looked around and Doug's finished up. So we called him over and he's like, oh, good find.
Know what that is.
It was just unmistakable what the significance was. It was marked with 2 Royal Navy broad arrows, an indisputable indication that this came from a Royal Navy ship and undeniably from either Erebus or Terror.
In the 19th century, these arrow-shaped marks were used to identify British Navy property. The object is quickly identified from the ship's plans as the metal fitting that supported one of the ship's cranes. In over a century of searching, this is by far the most important clue to the whereabouts of Franklin's ships.
How did it end up there,
This
though?
large iron object, very close to where the Inuit report that they encountered one of these ships. To find this in that vicinity is very, very exciting, and it really told us that we were barking up the right tree.
The discovery of a metal artifact from one of Franklin's ships has dramatically reduced the radius of the search. The object is too large and heavy to have traveled far from its parent ship. So the Parks Canada team deploys its sonar equipment in the surrounding waters. And after just a few minutes, a signal appears.
John Moore, a colleague, and I were manning the side-scan sonar station. We're both looking at the sonar monitor, and there it comes. This really unmistakable outline of a shipwreck. No doubt what it was. Started to scroll down the monitor. And it wasn't even halfway onto the screen before you really knew what you were looking at. I jabbed my finger at the screen and kind of lunged forward and said, "That's it, that's it."
When I saw the image of the ship coming down, it cut my legs, literally.
It looks small on the radar.
Oh my God, this is going to be a treasure trove of information, and we are going to really open up a window directly into history.
This is a great moment for exploration. We've been searching for, 160 years for answers to what happened to the Franklin expedition. The best equipped, most finely prepared and trained expedition that had ever set out for the Northwest Passage, and to have it literally obliterated and in mass disaster, no survivors and no ships. It's just, it's been a confounding mystery. To finally have something significant, to finally have a ship is incredible. I've spent most of my adult life dreaming of this day, and it's here.
Most of his life.
This is a day of some very good news, and that is that we have found one of the two Franklin ships.
So this is like a big deal, it looks like, for maybe the Commonwealth, because that looked like Australia on the
ships.
What is that a map of behind? No, that's Canada. That's just Canada by itself, okay. For a second I thought it looked like Australia, but now I see the water coming down in the middle of it there. Yeah, okay. So this was like a bigger deal, I guess. I don't know. You guys over in the UK, was there like a general consciousness of this going on, or is this mostly just for like the science and military geeks that follow this stuff? Or was there like this announcement? Because that was was it the Prime Minister of Canada talking about that? So for him to be talking about it, and for there to be that like applause, that uproar of applause, it seems like that this was a bigger deal than I thought. I thought it was just within the science community that this was going on, but I don't know. You guys in Canada and the UK, were you aware of this going on? You know, how big of a deal is it to the general population? Because I'd never heard of the Franklin expedition before, or these ships.
Scientists have located one of the ships from the fabled Franklin expedition.
One of two ships used to search for the Northwest Passage.
Search teams have finally hit the jackpot.
An absolutely incredible day for those people, some of whom have spent, a good chunk of their life's work.
For the search team, it's the find of a lifetime. But there's no time to bask in the glory. They're hoping for a closer look at the wreck before the seas freeze over for the winter.
Main 3,000. Right on. Pony 21.
They waste no time putting the first divers in the water.
Diving would freak me out. I would never do it. I don't mind watching other people do it.
I caught a glimpse of the timber on the seafloor, followed along its length, just growing anticipation and excitement, and then boom.
So cloudy though, it'd be hard to see.
Towering overhead, out of the haze loomed the bulk of this stately shipwreck, full 5 meters tall.
4 or 5 meters?
Finally laying hand on the side of this storied shipwreck. It was quite a remarkable experience that I'll never forget.
4 or 5 meters is not that tall.
From the beginning of that dive with John to the very end, it was almost too much to take in.
Sitting 11 meters below the surface, the wreck is a diver's dream. In the cold Arctic water, the level of preservation is remarkable, and artifacts are strewn across the site in plain view.
Oh, is that a gun? It's a cannon. Incredible. Is that 2 of them? 2 of them. Yeah.
Okay. They look so much smaller than what I would think.
There's so much to see, it boggles the mind.
From the surface, the Canadian Hydrographic Service carries out more sonar work to build up a 3D image of the entire wreck. Its masts have been swept away by drifting ice, but the body of the ship remains remarkably intact. Holes in the deck even allow the divers to get their first look inside the ship.
And I was peering around inside the ship, just gazing inside, and you could look forward and see murky features. Just the incredible sensation of being inside, sharing this place where the men of the Franklin expedition went through these difficult experiences. That's where they would have spent long, harrowing winters to the dark Arctic nights. It's just an absolute remarkable sight. The fact that it still stands intact, it allows you to sort of place yourself there. You feel this connection with the past. It's really quite astonishing.
Those are small cannons.
To cap it all off,
This whole ship is smaller than I think I had envisioned. When they were talking about like old gunner ships, I just don't know the sizes of the ships. But when I think of an old Navy ship, I think of about like this huge ship. I think of something like the HMS Victory, something like that. So this ship seems to be quite a bit smaller than that, because 4 to 5 meters is somewhere around 15 feet, maybe. I think that's about right. Because a meter, I think it's just slightly longer than a yard, and I know yards over here in the U.S., and a yard is 3 feet, so 5 yards would be 15 feet. So, is that right? I think, yeah. 15 feet, so it would be somewhere around in there. Huh.
an iconic prize lay in wait.
I hear John call over on the headset saying, "You're not going to believe this, but I found the bell." And I thought I must have misheard him. But sure enough, I went over and there was the ship's bell lying in plain sight right on top of the upper deck.
Embossed on the side is the year the ship set sail, 1845. A poignant reminder of the terrible fate of the Franklin expedition.
There's an arrow. Do they know which ship this is?
Today was an extraordinary day. I've never had the like of it in my entire career, and I probably never will after this day. This wreck site, without a doubt, is one of the most extraordinary things I've ever laid eyes on. It is absolutely an underwater archaeologist's dream.
Tilted the way you were.
Take them slightly back, doesn't need to go much. Okay, we're good.
Back at the park's Canada laboratory, the bell is carefully cleaned.
Okay.
Yeah, we really want to capture this arrow here.
Cast in Britain 170 years ago. It's now scanned in 3D to create a digital replica that will never decay. By matching up the sonar data with plans from the National Maritime Museum, the wreck is confirmed as HMS Erebus, Franklin's flagship. The sonar image enables us to build a computer-generated picture of the wreck in all its glory. The find is a stunning success for the team, and a vindication of the Inuit oral tradition that led them to it. In many ways, this is just the beginning. The wreck will be explored in great detail in years to come, and anything brought to the surface will undergo painstaking conservation and study. But already, this wreck has thrown up one extraordinary possibility. An idea that could rewrite the history of exploration. Originally, it was thought both ships had been abandoned off King William Island. much further north. So how did this ship move 100 miles to the south?
So where the wreck of Erebus is found, it actually happens to be protected, almost surrounded by a barrier of small islands and islets. What we ask ourselves is how this ship arrived at that location.
One option is that HMS Erebus was carried by the ice itself. Satellite imagery from the Canadian Ice Service shows that ice in this area flows south with the prevailing wind.
You see the tendril of ice coming down to the bottom of the screen, and that's being expelled from Alexander Strait into the Queen Maud Gulf. So it's not terribly surprising that at least one of the ships ultimately would have been directed towards Wilmot Crampton Bay. What is less clear, however, is how it could have gotten through this tangled web of small islands and shoals, how it worked itself into a protective pocket of where we find it today.
It's unlikely the ice could drag a ship intact through this dense network of reefs and shoals. But there is a more plausible explanation.
Okay.
According to Inuit testimony, when Erebus was spotted here, smoke was rising from the ship, and a gangplank had been lowered to the ice.
I did see smoke in one of those previous
to the
scenes.
ship, while the rest continued to march. And did they steer the ship to where it now lies?
There has to be some sort of human hand into getting the ships there. When did that start, and how easy was that? Those are the kind of questions that we're going to look into.
The possibility that crew members steered Erebus to its final resting place is crucial. From this point onwards, the Northwest Passage had already been surveyed. Any of Franklin's men who reached this spot would have completed their mission's goal.
Now these men, that last surviving band, a final fire before the flame goes out, these men have in effect completed the final link in the chain of the Northwest Passage, but that is so far from their minds at that moment.
Wait, what?
These men are...
I don't understand this, because the Northwest Passage goes all the way past Alaska through the Bering Strait. They're not even like halfway there. How are they completing their mission? I don't understand what they're talking about.
Men are thinking nothing of fame or records. They're thinking of the following day.
Inuit accounts mention a few sets of what they called white man's footsteps, heading inland. A last trace of the last remaining souls. In navigating the ship to where it now lies, those men would have found the final link of the elusive Northwest Passage. The wreck of HMS Erebus is a monument to their achievement and to the sacrifice of all 129 men of Franklin's lost expedition.
Is he saying that... Is this over? I want to stop. Okay, good.
We were...
Okay, guys. Well, I just had all of my stuff pop up. Alright, I gotta remember to check that before I start my videos. Anyway, by the way, subscribe and look at my social media. I really don't understand this this last bit here where he's talking about they found the final link. Is he talking about they found the way through that bits of ice to the other side? Because if we go back and look at this right here, I don't know exactly where they were, and you guys can't see my mouse on this, but you see this Victoria Island part in the center here, and then we have this Banks Island up here, and we have these two arrows that converge. That would be, I guess, the link that they're talking about, but I don't know where they actually went, like where they went down. I wonder if... Where's my mouse? Okay. I wonder if, hello. Northwest Passage, King William Island. I don't know if this is gonna King William Island is right here. Okay. So they would have... Well, I guess they would have made it through a lot of these iceberg areas. They would have been right around... I don't know if you guys can see it right here. There's number 6 right here. There's green 6 down here between Victoria Island and King William Island. That's kind of where they would have been, or maybe where that 5 is up there. So they were kind of almost through all of that, I guess. Didn't the other one, though, have the Northwest Passage going through over Banks Island, like north of Banks Island right there? Let's look at that again. Oh, you could go either way. You could go either way. Okay, there's a Victoria Strait up there. Okay. This is I keep trying to get to that picture and it's not doing it. Okay, well, so you could go either way, it looks like, through there. Looks like the better way would be to go to the north of Victoria Island, maybe. Or maybe go around Banks Island up here too. Like, I'm not sure why you would have to cut through. Well, maybe you want to stay closer to the shoreline? I'm not sure. Okay. Alright, well, that's interesting. Yeah, if you guys could maybe explain that last bit, how they, like, found the link to, I guess, Asia or whatever through that, because I'm still, I mean, they're still only about halfway through all that mess right there, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, the other thing I found really interesting was the kind of like the British attitude of you have to basically conquer the world and you basically have to have these lines on the map connecting the entire world for your empire. Like, that's a really interesting mindset, and I guess it goes hand in hand with having, you know, the British Empire, or having any empire. You want to have access to the entire world in a sense. So I can understand it, but I really hadn't heard that before about it. So it's interesting to hear the mindset of it and kind of what they were after as far as like exploration and maps go. So that was good. And also the Northwest Passage, like learning where it is right here, because, you know, honestly, we like the local zoo here, the Memphis Zoo, has a section called the Northwest Passage, and it's always something we hear over here in the United States, kind of relating more to Alaska and that area up there. And I had no idea that it was something that went all the way through these northern parts of Canada and through the Bering Strait up here. And I didn't know what the purpose of it was for there to be a route from Europe to Asia. So yeah, I've always thought that the Northwest Passage was a way for explorers from the mainland US to get up through Alaska. So to actually see what it is now, it's actually a ship passage going through as a shortcut, I guess. So they didn't have to go around South America. So that's brand new information. I finally learned about the Northwest Passage, learned about the Empire's kind of mindset with all of this stuff. And also the Franklin expedition, which I had no idea about. You know, it seems like to be something that you guys maybe are taught more about in Britain and Canada. The Commonwealth countries, maybe you guys are taught more about it in school and stuff because it's part of your own exploration and your own history. Whereas here in the US, I don't recall ever learning about it. I've never heard of it before. So, yeah, interesting. Learn a little bit about the history of the Royal Navy and British exploration, and a little bit more about the geography of the Americas over here that I didn't know about. So, very cool. Scott, thanks for recommending this video. Definitely enlightened me quite a bit on all of this. And if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. We have the subscribe button coming up at the right time now. And also check out my social media in the pinned comment and the description. I also have my P.O. box and email, you know, there too if you want to contact me that way. And yeah, we'll have more stuff like this coming up. I got more Patreon requests to get through, and more of just like stuff that I want to watch, the stuff that you guys have recommended to me here on YouTube. So I got a whole lot more of that stuff coming up soon on my channel. Roger here and I, and Scarlett, she's under the desk now. Thank you guys for watching, as always, and we'll see you guys next time.